Good evening, folks. This is another episode of Cover One Football Weekly, part, of course, of the Cover One Sports Network. I am one of your two hosts tonight, Anthony Prohaska, joined by Kendall Mirsky. Kendall, very, very active day today in the NFL. We had some marquee matchups, some undefeateds going head-to-head. We had some standout player performances. We had some standout team performances. A lot to dive into in this week from a game plan, schematic standpoint from several games, several teams. But we are going to lead off with the Buffalo Bills and Miami Dolphins, I believe marquee matchup in the NFL coming into this week. He got a lot of burn nationally, was getting talked about like crazy. And again, understood, Miami has that crazy come from behind win against Baltimore in week 2. The Bills are rolling hot and just seemingly steamrolling everyone. They're coming in hot after dismantling Tennessee on Monday night in week 2. AFC East rivalry, games in Miami. Both teams are undefeated. 2 of the 6 undefeated teams heading into week 3 in the NFL. And just where's your head at coming out of this Bills game? Because, I labeled it in the episode here as we talked about like the variables that existed in Miami. And it's so hard to take things from this game because there was just a multitude of variables and an almost a perfect storm of negative instances that affected the Buffalo Bills, led this game and turned it into the Miami Dolphins' favor. But where's your head at right now as we leave, week 3 and the Bills are in second place? Dolphins sit atop the AFC East and are riding high right now.
Well, I should ask, are you asking as a Bills fan how I feel? Where's my headspace?
No,
or
where's
just
your
objectively as an NFL
yes,
fan?
Objectively, as the analyst that you are, when we come on this show, our hearts affect things a little bit. But when we come on these shows, even when we do the Bills podcast that we do, they are not Homer emotion, heart-based. They are, we do it because we love the Bills and we love football, but the analysis is always objective. So from an objective standpoint, you sit here right now, the Miami Dolphins won this game today. Where is your head at?
I think 2 things. One, the Dolphins continue to make the most out of their opportunities. Like last week with how they beat the Ravens, like they weren't dominating that game and they weren't dominating this game either. But they found ways to crawl back and fight back into both of those games, given very, very small windows of opportunity, and they capitalized in both weeks. So from a Dolphins perspective, like hats off to that. Being able to be clutch in those moments, come through in those moments when you need it, when you have to have it, they do it. And they've done it twice now. Not so much week 1. They just trounced the Patriots in week 1. From a Bills perspective, I think there are a lot of positive takeaways when you take a step back and you think about everything working against the Bills, and to really be as close as the Bills were to winning this game and it taking, a Josh Allen 440 something yard performance with like 60 something passing attempts. Like it literally had to be that if they were going to have a chance, because there were just so many people out here without, I think it was 5 or 6 starters on defense. And then even more guys just kept falling by the wayside throughout the game because of the heat and how it was affecting people. And that happened for both teams, but the Bills were behind from the start in the injury department. So I think it started to pile up very quickly. But I mean, you take a step back and the Bills outgained the Dolphins by 275 plus yards and outpossessed them by 20 plus minutes. And you're telling me that with a depleted roster, and it makes you feel good about the depth of this team, but obviously the result makes you come back to earth a little bit and be like, okay, the Bills definitely had some shortcomings here. There were mistakes. This was a winnable game for them, despite all of those things that I was just talking about, all those excuses, all those factors that could contribute to them losing this game or being behind the 8 ball in terms of having a competitive advantage. They still had a chance despite all of those things. And the overwhelming thought is all of those mistakes or miscues or missed opportunities just piled up to a point where they couldn't pull out the victory.
That's such such a huge piece for me. Again, it's the variable piece. And again, not looking at it from just a Bills lens, but if you are like, you come into this game and Gabe Davis is already banged up, but he plays. Then Mitch Morse is out. Then when we stay with the offensive line, there's multiple injuries across the offensive line. So now you're playing your third string offensive lineman at multiple spots. Tommy Doyle's in at guard. You got Manx in at center. Questenberry's in at right tackle. Your entire right side of the offensive line is brand new, basically, at this point. Then you go over to the defensive side of the ball. We know a defensive tackle coming into this game. Ed Oliver's out. Jordan Phillips is out. You go into the secondary. Dane Jackson is out. Micah Hyde is out for the year. Jordan Poyer is out. Christian Benford goes down in the middle of the first half, and Jamarcus Ingram is now your starting outside corner. Then you add in honestly a really good play by the corner for Miami, but that Gabriel Davis drop touchdown in the end zone. The bobbled snap by Allen at the end of the first half, which leads to him not being able to spike it, and he has to try and run a play. Otherwise, he'll get flagged for grounding. The missed field goal in the second half, the 3rd and 22, the heat exhaustion, the cramping, all of these things that, yes, Miami had to deal with in some degree as well. But I almost don't want to, you and I were talking about what games to cover in today's episode. And one of the ones we discussed was Green Bay and Tampa Bay. And I immediately was like, I don't even want to speak really about it because Tampa Bay's offense is Mike Evans is out and Julio's out and Godwin is out. And their offense is just kaput because all the injuries, too many variables. I kind of want to throw it out. Yes. And I don't want to throw this game out, Bills Dolphins, because I think there are some points that need to be taken away from it, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But the variables, there's just so much variability. And if you're looking at this game objectively, if you're a Bills fan, I don't think you need to come onto this game being like, oh, God, things are terrible. Also, on the flip side, if you're a Miami fan and you're coming out thinking you're the best team in the AFC East, you're bugging. Like, stop it. I'm very interested to see what happens with this Bills team going forward. I'm going to focus on one side of the ball first. This is something you and I have talked about so much this offseason. Things are different for the Buffalo Bills offense when you can't run the football. Plain and simple. I know last week it was kind of like fun in games of being like, oh, they couldn't run it at all. And they look at all the points they put up, like bang, bang, finger guns and all that stuff.
Every week. It's
no,
not
it
sustainable.
Won't. Oh, also speaking plays that were missed, I forgot Milano's interception that was dropped. That could have been a pick six. But, forget about that. Not that I'm bothered. But yes, it's not sustainable week over week when you cannot run the football, when you do not have a pivot. And then you're sitting in a game where somebody pointed out on Twitter earlier, and just I forgot how well it was said and who said it, but it was just like, oh, it would have been nice like when Miami's defense was gassed in the fourth quarter if the Bills could have just leaned on them with the run game.
Right.
And it couldn't. And the Bills were moving the ball. Allen had over 400 yards, but the 63 pass attempts, it just seemed, it's the phrasing I use all the time. It seemed like they were just having to squeeze blood from a stone every single play. Things were just hard because you constantly need pass protection. You constantly need someone to get open, or Josh Allen needs to make a play. And in a game where your protection is all banged up, it'd be nice if you can just simplify things for your offensive line and be like, you know what, let's go forward. Let's run the ball a little bit. And that's not even, I don't want to hear, I know I've heard from some people saying like, well, they couldn't run the ball because the backup offensive line was in there. It's not a backup offensive line issue. They had struggles running the ball last week, and they were outgunned up front again this week. This Bills offense can still win if they come out and just chuck it around the field 75 times, but it's much different. It's much harder when you don't have a pivot to go to. And the Bills not having that aspect, the fact that they ran, God, this is nuts. Josh Allen had 63 pass attempts. They ran 90 plays to Miami's 39. 90 to 39. One of the things that I was thinking of in this game as I was watching it was, well, the heat exhaustion and all that, Miami's defense is going to be done by the third quarter because they're running all over. And you started to see some runs trickle through, the big Zach Moss run. You saw some nice pieces started to come through in the second half, but they just could not sustain that run game. That is something, again, it's only week 3. It's fixable. You can move forward.
We saw them fix it last year.
Correct. We did see them. Yes, we did. That's a problem for this offense.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people made jokes about it with you don't need a run game or you just blah, 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 this and that. There were no easy yards today for the Bills offense. Part of that is also related to how the defense played. We saw I forget which beat reporter it was, that tweeted out some of the free access RPOs from Bills versus Titans. And it was like, this should be the Bills run game. Cool. That only works if corners are playing off coverage on you. Exactly. And you have that space. And guess what the Miami Dolphins did? The Dolphins came up and challenged the Bills receivers. All of a sudden, those free access routes on the outside where you can just dump it off real quick and gain 5 or 6 and maybe get some yards after catch and get a first down, they're not there. So the pass plays that were extensions of the run game against Tennessee were not there versus Miami. The run game was not there versus Miami. Things were just hard for this offense. The variables for me are the biggest takeaway. There was a multitude of just nonsense that happened in this game. And credit to Miami. I don't want to knock them too much and make it seem like, they didn't win this game. Kudos to them. They are 3-0. They're tops of the AFC East, bravo for them. But the variables are my biggest takeaway. The second, right under there a little bit, is that Bills running game. Because for the second week in a row, they got beaten 2 ways on the ground. They gave up push and they gave up penetration. Those are both recipes for absolute and utter failure when it comes to your run game. And it's going to hinder this Buffalo Bills team moving forward, not to mention if the offensive line also can't pass protect, which they could not today, which was a problem. But that's been the first time that's happened this year. So I'm dialing it back a little from a pass protection standpoint. But this Bills run game is a problem right now. And not in like a cool way, like, yo, that dude's a problem. Not a problem like it's bad.
No, it's definitely not good. Yeah, you need some semblance of reliability in that room. And I think we were getting a lot of extension of the run game via the pass. And that's kind of the problem. The fact that, you're in the game and you realize, I'm sure Ken Dorsey realized halfway through the game or so that it wasn't happening. There wasn't enough push. And the only way to manufacture a run game was via the pass, via some RPO free access stuff. And I think that might have happened like 3 times this game on like 63 attempts. And then some of the quick dump offs to Singletary. I mean, Singletary had like 9 receptions, obviously a big James Cook game in that regard too. Like you started to see him like really start to get some more work. So I think that's part of it. But I think a big part is, you just need to take some of the weight off of Josh Allen. I mean, this has been a thing since 2020. You won games in 2020 because of Josh Allen and his arm. And
sorry, I just realized when I was speaking earlier, I was on mute. Yeah, I was saying things and I was like, what is going on? And I'm sorry.
That's why I just rolled through.
Continue your thought. Take some pressure off of Josh Allen.
But that's the thing. It's just like we could do it in 2020, right? The Bills could do that in 2020. Can you continue to do that for 3 straight years without an option B? There needs to be some other option to take that pressure off of him. And obviously Diggs was that against the Titans, that extension of the run game. That's very easy for Josh Allen. Pre-snap read, always off, predetermined. I know I'm going here. It's
5
very
yards,
easy.
bang,
Right,
bang,
exactly. Bang. But like you said, you're not going to get that every single week. So you need to have some sense of having that physical ability to just maul opponents. And I do think that part of it is obviously the depleted offensive line in this game, lacking continuity with that entire right side. It makes it tough, but in a lot of ways, most offensive linemen are going to tell you that run blocking is a lot easier than pass blocking, and that should have come a little bit easier to that group. So it's unfortunate to see it continue to be a shortcoming for this offense year over year, but I do think they will find some footing in that regard. And I think obviously some more time and trial and error under Aaron Kromer is going to be a lot of this, because obviously he's still establishing what he wants from the run game, from his individual guys up front. So I think it all kind of has to come together, and you kind of have to learn from these losses if you do want to improve in the run game. So I think it is one of those bullets you kind of have to bite early in the year, especially for an offense like this that wasn't necessarily going to learn early in the run game, because we know they're not giving a lot of opportunities to the run game to begin with.
That's fair. I don't like to do box score watching, but these numbers are just wild. Okay. Devin Singletary had 9 carries for 13 yards. That's an average of 1.4 yards per carry.
What was his long? Do you have that there?
6.
Yeah.
So let's dial it back. Take away the 1 carry for 6 yards. He had 8 carries for 7 yards.
Yeah.
Zach Moss had 4 carries for 43 yards, 4 carries for 46 yards with a long of 43. So if you take away the 43 yarder, he had 3 carries for 3 yards. That's also something too. We talked about this last week and I tweeted it out today. The whole Devin Singletary has a bad run and it's like, man, the offensive line got blown up. They suck. And then Moss has a bad run and it's like, man, Moss sucks. It's not the running backs. Yes, Singletary is more elusive. And if somebody penetrates in the backfield, he has the better chance of making that defender miss in the backfield. Yes. But I gotta stop. Thank you very much, Matthias. Matthias is giving us a super chat. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. But he's also giving +5 points to Ned for Ned's comment, which I brought up earlier. Ned, you're awesome. We appreciate you as always. And Ned said, appreciate you guys and Kendall. The D did their job. Kudos at the second. I wouldn't even say second string secondary. I would say third string secondary at this point in this game. The offense didn't quite get it done. 1,000%. Thank you very much for the super chat, Ned, and from you, Matthias, as well. The numbers there are nuts. 4 for 46 for Moss. Again, remove the 43 yarder. He's got 3 carries for 3 yards. Singletary had 9 for 13. Remove his long of 6, and he had 8 for 7. It's a run blocking issue. They are getting push and penetration from the defense. And it's also really disappointing because you and I championed the Aaron Cromer edition so much. Right. And we come out in week 1, Josh Allen's passing the ball, but we saw success in the run game. We saw them taking little bits from the Kyle Shanahan playbook and adding it to what's already worked for them. And we saw technique and sustainability. And it seems like that has just disappeared these past 2 weeks. And yes, there's plenty of time to course correct, plenty of time to learn from this, but they need something in the run game. There is just nothing happening up front. And again, you got to find some way to get easy yards. And maybe those easy yards are the checkdowns and the dump offs over the middle. And I also want to touch on this running back group. One, I love Zach Moss showing speed and burst to get around the corner and upfield.
Yeah, right. That dude didn't set the edge well, and he made him pay.
He got set up with this whole thing. The front got washed, and this run put Zach Moss in a one-on-one scenario with Nick Needham. Moss gave him a little hezzy, a little stutter, and beat him around the corner and up the sideline with speed and burst. If Javon Holland isn't sweet like he is and cuts that off, that might have been a touchdown. 2, for all the people who like Zach Moss can't make any, all of a sudden, I'm a champion for Zach Moss, and I'm not even that. But that huge 3rd down conversion where Allen dumps it off to Moss and he catches it and immediately ducks and gets under his man and then bounces off and gets the first down. It was just funny to see Moss making plays after so many people were trying to dunk on him left and right. But I mentioned that to say Singletary can't get it going. Moss can't get it going. Yeah, it's offensive line issues. If the Bills, this is like as hot takey as I get. If the Bills are going to go this pass heavy and this spread, and defensive lines are going to keep trying to get upfield in a hurry and penetrate, I need more James Cook. I need someone with more speed in the backfield to take advantage of those quick hitting lanes and gaps that open up when defenders get upfield, right? And then I need someone who I can easily flex out into anywhere in the route distribution and get him to run almost any route.
Or if you're checking it down on a quick curl from shotgun, you can get 5 more instead of 3 more.
Yes, he made a difference today. What also I thought was disappointing too, we've lauded Devin Singletary's broken tackle plus missed tackle percentage. He wasn't making a lot of guys miss in space on those checkdowns. He was often getting brought down by the first guy, and then you put Cook in, he was showing some burst. He was making guys miss. Maybe it's the function of the fresh legs, although I did notice that from Singletary early in the game as well when he was, quote unquote fresher. But if the Bills are going to lean this forward and it's like, listen, no matter what we can do, we can't run the ball. We got to go full spread. It is what it is. I think James Cook is needed more in this offense because you need 5. Granted, provided if he can do the thing that we've talked about, which is pass protect.
Yeah.
But if you're the Bills sitting here, you're looking at this game, and I think, you're taking away. It's hard to take away certain aspects of the game because there were so many variables. But for me, I'm sitting there taking away, looking at things, at the offensive line, this run game that we've talked about all off season. And then if you're the Miami Dolphins, it's the one thing I'm rolling with if I'm a Miami fan or if I'm, in that Miami group, in that coaching staff, that room. What have we heard? Granted, offensive line is banged up. Diggs was cramping all day. Gabe Davis is not 100%, but you don't blitz Josh Allen. You don't play man coverage. Miami K'd out, and I don't know if it's because of the heat. And yes, I think you can't give them 100% credit here because the injuries and the cramping were variables that influenced the state of play. But Miami coming out and just going cover zero, simulated pressures, man coverage, challenging. They showed that wasn't as much of a game plan function as the game went on. They came out of the gate like that. It burned them early on. They were miscommunicating on some coverage pieces.
But they stuck with it.
They did, and they just kept going to the well. They stayed with who their identity is, and it was kind of live by the sword, die by the sword. And it burned them a couple times, and then it eventually kind of won out. Very interesting to see how they continue to go with that because
they will have to pivot at some point, but when will they pivot and who will they have to pivot against? Because someone will make them pay. Will it have to be a midweek adjustment or a mid-game adjustment? Like, will it cost them a game because they're too stubborn to adjust mid-game? Like, I definitely like that they stuck with that identity, like you said. But at some point, you'd think that some offense around the league will make them pay for that and make them have to pivot. And we'll see if that happens, when that happens.
Or I wonder, Byron Jones is on the pup. Maybe when Byron Jones comes back, they just lean into it even harder.
Exactly. They're not at full force in the secondary right now.
No. So very interested to see what Miami does, especially as they go down the stretch and, the games that they have coming up, even this Thursday playing against Cincinnati, who got their first win today. Like, that's going to be a really interesting one because Cincinnati cannot protect to save their lives. And we're going to see what happens if the Dolphins can take. That's one that I think if you're a Bills fan, that measuring stick needs to go because if Miami goes at Cincinnati and they can't get pressure on Burrow, you're looking at this Bills offensive line being like, the Bengals offensive line is terrible. Burrow got sacked 13 times in the first 2 weeks. If Miami can't get to him, but they got to Allen, you got to do some soul searching up front for this Bills group as a whole. But I think the biggest takeaway, variables, offensive line in the run game, and you got to stay healthy. You got to figure out some kind of combination of those things. It's going to be very, very, very tough. We're going to switch topics now. Another undefeated team that went down today, Kansas City Chiefs, going into Indianapolis, a team that Indianapolis has defeated Kansas City before and given them problems. I forget, 2017 or 18, when the Colts went into Kansas City and beat them on like Sunday Night Football. They've always played them tough, but no Shaq Leonard today. The team is reeling a little bit. They get a little healthier on offense, and the Colts get their first win of the season and move to an ugly 1-1-1. I hate looking at it on the standings, like 1-1. It's just disgusting,
baby.
I hate it. It makes me think of soccer. Like I'm looking at the table early on in the year, and I'm like, oh, okay, like they have a loss, a win, and a draw. Like, okay, that makes sense. It's just weird to look at and see.
No, it's weird.
The Chiefs go down. What are you thinking taken away from this game, which was an important one for Indianapolis, a disappointing one for Kansas City? What's your biggest takeaway coming out of this Colts-Chiefs game as the Colts get their first win and the Chiefs get their first loss?
I have two. My biggest takeaway is the Colts defense. My second is the Chiefs kind of just giving this game away with miscues.
Yes.
Kind of similarly to the Bills to an extent, like both
the Chiefs and Bills are like paired for eternity in everything.
Yes.
Like the kind of coverages that Mahomes and Allen see, the way they win games, like everything is just.
Both teams, I don't want to say that they got beat, but they lost. I think that's the best way to put it. They opened the door for their opponent to win, both of them in week 3 this week. So a lot of this does still stem from the Colts being able to play defense. And the conversation I had last week about how perhaps they're really missing Eberflus and, A lot of what they're going to want to do is going to be dependent on game script and being ahead in game script so they can lean on Jonathan Taylor. That wasn't the case this week. It really wasn't.
Sorry, I'm laughing because so many of the things you're saying are what I have in my notes, and I'm just like, you hit my top 3 points. I have game script in all caps.
Funny. I mean, but they didn't. That's what's wild. This wasn't the typical game script that they had to follow. They came from behind. There were moments where they were leading, but their run game was never dominant in this game. Their pass protection was still shoddy. And, Matt Ryan is still the second he gets hurried, he's going to be sacked or it's an incomplete pass or it's an interception. If you hurry Matt Ryan, it's a positive play for the defense. And that will hold back the Colts offense the entire year. So I do think my biggest takeaway is that the Colts are going to have to win games with defense and special teams. And they did that this week. They won field position for the most part. They got lucky with that early muff punt by Sky Moore, faked a failed fake field goal, a missed field goal late, and then just an awesome finishing drive to salt it out, but it really just comes back to the idea that they wouldn't be in that position in the first place if they didn't make life difficult for Mahomes throughout the entire game. And I think, honestly, I do think that the Chiefs are going to start facing some of these issues as the year moves on, especially if they're not going to get significant contributions from Hardman and Sky Moore, because they're lacking a dynamic player in the pass game outside of Kelsey. And I think teams are going to be able to just kind of key in on Kelsey and understand that Juju isn't Tyreek Hill. Neither is Hardman. Neither is Sky Moore. And you don't necessarily have to over allocate resources to 2 guys. You can just over allocate resources to 1 guy, and you're not spread too thin elsewhere. And it makes it a little bit easier to play this Chiefs offense and makes life a little bit harder for Mahomes and puts more pressure on Mahomes to improvise and make plays off script or just be fantastic. I mean, that sidearm throw on that long third down comes to mind. That was fantastic. But I think a lot of this does stem from the defense, putting the offense in good positions and then putting Matt Ryan in positions to just be a good game manager, just take care of the ball. Really didn't make mistakes. He didn't make a lot of turnover-worthy throws. I believe he had a fumble or 2, but both of those were stemming from the idea that if he gets hurried, it's a positive play for the defense, which is at this point just a given in his career, I guess.
Yeah, understandable.
But I do think the offense has come a long way just by getting Pittman and Pierce back. The offense just looked a little bit more dynamic. They had more facets to the game than just, hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor. And then their rotation of tight ends is exciting to me. I don't know what it is about their tight ends, the combination of Ali Cox, who's that guy? Granson, I want to say.
Granson's the one who in the Bills preseason game burned Bernard on that over. And I was just like, who is that tight end
He's
that runs?
athletic.
He's got 97 Madden speed. I was like, who is that? And then Jelani Woods, who's a freak.
Jelani Woods is the 6'8" red zone threat who only had 2 pass catches today, but both for touchdowns. And that's the thing. And on the first touchdown, I believe they were in 13 personnel. All 3 of those tight ends were on the field for that play. And they're all doing different things. One of them's blocking, 2 of them's going into routes. And next thing you know, there's just this sneaky deep cross into the back of the end zone. And there's
on
Jelani
a safety
Woods.
And Juan Thornhill, he's beating a safety.
Every time he's got 8 inches on him. So
he takes 2 steps and he can go the length of the field because he's like Godzilla.
He is. So I think the Colts are going to be an interesting case study this year because they are limited by I don't want to say retro QB, but a prior generation QB, a QB that lives in the pocket.
A pocket passer.
And if you force him to be anything more than a pocket passer, you're going to get the better of him. So I am curious how far this Colts team can go with a running game, a game manager, and good defense, because that's what it's going to take for them to win games.
I came into this game thinking the Colts defense, you sent me that that tweet from Nate Tice on Gus Bradley. Just not basically, it's a joke on Gus Bradley not changing anything. And you know what Gus Bradley's going to do. You're going to come on, play a lot of single high coverage, mainly cover 3. Okay.
You just have to execute better than anyone else.
But that's so hard against, especially a
It
team
is.
like the Chiefs. Like these too high coverages and too high pre-shell and too high post snap and all that. It was designed to hinder offenses literally like the Kansas City Chiefs and like the Buffalo Bills, because cover 3 defenses, the single high defenses, you were getting destroyed by teams like the Chiefs. So you come into this game and you think, oh, you got this predominantly single high defense versus this team that single high defenses are outdated against. And okay, well, that ain't gonna work. And it did. And I think what you mentioned too, the whole Kansas City lacking a certain aspect to threaten the Colts defense with. Multiple times in this game, the Chiefs were in a position where Kelsey would be that traditional X receiver, and it's Travis Kelsey, which is awesome normally when Tyreek Hill is your slot receiver, because then it's like, well, you're screwed. What are you going to do? It works heavily and not heavily, but it works into the Colts' favor a bit when you're playing a single high coverage and Travis Kelsey is the X receiver, because guess what you get to do? You get to put Stephon Gilmore on Travis Kelsey, and that's not a mismatch for Stephon Gilmore. Gilmore's got the size, the speed, and the physicality to go and play shot for shot and mix it up with Travis Kelsey. Really like that aspect of their defense. But overall for me, I again, my notes say game script in all caps. The game script didn't screw the Colts like it did last week. Even when they were down in this game, they were still able to run the ball.
Exactly. It didn't put them to a point where they were like, nah, we got no choice but to pass. They had a choice.
Correct.
It was just probably leaning a little bit more towards pass, where last week it was like, no, you have to pass or you're going to lose.
Yeah, you have to pass. And even those situations where it's like, well, they probably should. If they run, you got like the element of surprise, a little bit of tendency breaking action. So that could play in their favor a bit if you're trying to play devil's advocate. But either way, this game never got out of control for the Colts. They were always within striking distance, which allowed them to keep running the ball. They were also in a lot of third and manageables in this game, which allowed them, if you go and you watch this game back and you look at all the third down conversions, so many third downs were like 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 2. And what were you seeing? Like Ashton Doolin on a slant, or Alec Pierce on a drag, or Michael Pittman on a hitch, all run it like 4 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards just to get the first down. So they were in these third and manageable situations. They were able to, expose some things underneath. But what really, also I want to give some credit to Matt Ryan. He has some really good throws. He was on time.
Really did.
Good ball placement. The one up the sideline to Alec Pierce.
I mean, that was just vintage Cincinnati Alec Pierce. That was perfect ball placement. Let him go up, climb the ladder, and go get it.
That was vintage Cincinnati Alec Pierce, and that was vintage Matt Ryan being like, let me go chuck this up to Julio Jones right now, up the sideline, and see what we can get. Good
Not
ball.
Saying they're the same, Alec Pierce and Julio Jones.
No, I would not insult Alec Pierce by comparing him to prime Julio Jones. Pierce is, how dare you?
Well
how dare you? Thank you. Appreciate it. I take a bow. But again, not to knock the Colts. Kansas City, like you mentioned, so they missed the extra point when they were down 7 to start the game. So it's 7-0. They score a touchdown. It's 7-6 because they missed the extra point. They had a fake field goal pass attempt that they were incomplete on 4th down.
Clearly missing Butker.
Yes. Oh, God. Boy, who would have thought that a kicker would wreak such havoc?
Right.
They then missed a field goal, straight up field goal towards the end of the game. Then the big one, Chris Jones sacks Matt Ryan on the game-winning drive with 4 minutes and 48 seconds left on 3rd down, forces 4th and roughly 20 from the Indianapolis, about 38-39. But he gets into Ryan's face a little bit after the sack, gets called for unsportsmanlike conduct, 15-yard penalty, 1st down Colts. That game-winning drive should have been done right there. Credit to the Colts for executing and getting it done. But the Chiefs really kind of lost this game for themselves. They had a multitude of opportunities to really take it. Again, not to box score watch, but you're sitting there and you're looking at Jonathan Taylor, 21 carries, 71 yards, only had 3.4. You look at the pressure that the Chiefs were able to get at times with the blitz. And this was the thing I think they didn't hit home enough. The Chiefs under Steve Spagnuolo, we know what Steve Spagnuolo is at this point. Spags just wants to rush 4. That's his coverage identity. And then on 3rd downs, depending on the situation, yes, you're going to get designer blitzes and just crazy crap that's going to make your head spin because you don't know who's coming. But they're predominantly going to rush 4, which I think also played into the Colts' hand a little bit because, granted, they got absolutely worked by the Jags front last week and all the games and physicality that they have. But the Chiefs front doesn't have the physicality and violence and speed to power that the Jags front has. And so I think that 4 down front was a better matchup for the Colts. You saw multiple times. It seemed like anytime there was a sack on Matt Ryan, they were bringing 5. Nick Bolton was coming free, or someone was coming free because they just rushed 5 and it gummed up the works and somebody got beat. I thought they would go to that a little more. I get that they stuck more to their identity and being like a 4 down, 4-man rush kind of team, but I don't want to be, that Debbie Downer for the Colts, but I see this team right now as a game script dependent and more importantly, a superstar dependent team. They are going to win games because Jonathan Taylor is either the best player on the field or because when Shaq Leonard comes back, Shaq Leonard is the best player on the field. They are going to live and die every week with Taylor having a good game or Quentin Nelson having a good game or Pittman potentially maybe balling out. I don't think Matt Ryan's that guy anymore that's just going to carry you to victory. He needs a legitimate supporting cast. And then, on defense, they can win if Shaq Leonard has like 14 tackles and an interception and Gilmore gets an interception, maybe Blackman gets one or Buckner takes the game over, or Kwity Paye makes some, noise up front. They are a game script superstar dependent football team, which isn't bad. You can still win that way, but it's hard to win that way. But kudos to them. And also my buddy who in our Survivor League was like, I'm taking the Chiefs. And I was like, the Colts always give the Chiefs problems. I'm staying away from that game. He was like, no. And I was like, Pittman's going to be back and Pierce is going to be back. And he was like, nah, I'm taking the Chiefs. He texted me and was very upset after today. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Survivor pools bring the worst out of people.
They bring out the worst. Fantasy football and survivor pools are just a bane of so many people's existences. But kudos to the Colts. They get in that win column. And what's nice for them now, they're sitting in this division that is, the Jags are sitting at the top of it, which is so, so splendid. But
I love that.
I love it too, but the Colts are very much in play for that AFC South. So their hopes at the beginning of the year are still, again, everything is almost in play for every single team.
For every team,
NFL. Maybe not the Raiders at 0-3, but you never know. But even for the Raiders, anybody who's 0-3, teams that are 3-0, 2-1, 1-2, 1-1. Oh, what are the Texans? 2-1. Like 2-1, the world is still a potential oyster for you. But the Colts get on the win sheet in a game that on paper should not have been a win for them. And even during the game, when you're watching it, the Chiefs, if you're Kansas City, this is the game where if you miss out on the 1 seed in the AFC or you miss out on the AFC, you come back to that game and you're like, that stupid Colts game. We finished tied with the Chargers. That stupid Colts game. We finished 1 game behind. I'm just not saying this, but we finished 1 game behind Buffalo for the 1 seed. Stupid Colts. You never know. You never know. Eagles or Jags? Eagles?
Yeah, let's go with Eagles.
Eagles. 3-0 team in the NFC. A team that I am a little fond of in the Philadelphia Eagles, mainly because I was on the Jalen Hurts train last year for fantasy football, and I had a lot of detractors who wanted to talk smack about how terrible Jalen Hurts was. And he had a terrific fantasy football year last year. Then coming into this year, there were potential rumors and there was some buzz that he was progressing as a passer. They add A.J. Brown. They get healthier on the offensive line. They make moves on defense. The Eagles sit here at 3-0 after beating the Washington Commanders today in pretty dominant fashion. Although, again, it is the Commanders, so I don't want to knock it too much. JMing comes in with the comments saying Eagles have looked very legit. But they do have some players.
The Commanders have put up a fight in really all of their games but this one.
That's very true. And I think that's even a credit too. Like the Eagles, what's your biggest takeaway for this Eagles team? My initial one that I lead with is how complete of a football team they are offensively and defensively, even special teams to a degree. But on defense, you've got this ability to rush 4 and play coverage. On offense, you've got the ability to go vertical, to go underneath, to run the ball with your quarterback or your running backs. They look like arguably, when healthy, if every team in the NFL is healthy, I think the Eagles and the Bills are up there for the 2 most complete football teams in the NFL. Ooh, Tampa Bay as well, when Tampa Bay is like healthy.
I still might give the nod to the Eagles.
But that's really saying something, right? Like the Eagles are 3-0 right now. We're focusing a little on today's yes, Caleb comes in and says the Eagles defense had 9 sacks today. You know what's even crazier? This was a stat I was going to save for later. They had 9 sacks on the day. 7 of them were just on 4-man rushes. They had 7 sacks with just a 4-man rush, and they're dropping 7 into coverage, which is a winning recipe in today's
And that
NFL.
Washington O-line is not bad.
No, Leno has played better.
Mm-hmm.
Wentz can navigate the pocket, although he does hold on to the ball too much. But those sacks,
he had a particularly bad day in that regard.
Yes, but they were getting after him early and often. And when you can get pressure with 4, that's a winning recipe for anyone, let alone when you're dropping Darius Slay back there and James Bradbury back there and C.D. Deuce, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back there. Maddox is a fun dude in the slot. They're nasty. They're physical. They fly around the ball. This team sits there at 3-0. They do have high hopes for this year. I think once they got A.J. Brown, and then coupled with their draft, this became a Super Bowl contending team. Where are you right now in this Eagles team? Again, we're focusing on today's game, but they're sitting there 3-0, and a lot of what we saw today has been seen throughout the year for this team. They look like they're really tying a lot of things together.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really, really high on this team. I was with you last year, not in the fantasy football regards to Jalen Hurts, but I was one of those guys that watched Jalen Hurts and I was like, this guy's built for the modern NFL. He just has to keep piece working it together in terms of how he's going to progress, because he has the bit that would make him work in the modern NFL. The same way we're talking, like 2 weeks ago, I talked about Justin Fields and Trey Lance. They both have that prerequisite of they can be a dual threat. Now they need to prove it with their arms. This is the season where Jalen Hurts is proving it with his arms. He's winning so much more with his arm and legs, and specifically using his legs as the secondary option, where, of course, the threat to run is still there and it will always be there, but he's not using his legs to scramble. He's using his legs to improvise, to buy time, to get out of the pocket and still keep his eyes downfield towards his weapons, which is obviously the big part of this, the A.J. Brown stuff. And Devontae Smith having an absolutely massive day today.
Dallas Goedert is a sick tight end.
Still there, like they clearly invested in him by shipping off Ertz and believing in Goddard, all of that stuff. And then, I mean, just the bevy of running backs that they have, like talk about like strategy and game plan dependent running backs. They could do whatever the hell they want with.
And they're all fun.
Gainwell,
Scott. Yeah, they're like...
it's wild. They all got like different elements that work in different ways. And the way we gush over the Bills running back room in that way, how they're all complementary, they got a very similar thing working there in Philadelphia and the running
and more
back
speed
room.
as well. They have versatility, but speed. Like all of them have burst or speed. And like Boston Scott is probably the slowest long speed guy, but in a 10 to 20 yard range, he's quick. The whole proverbial quicker than a hiccup. Like they got some fun pieces there in that backfield.
Yeah, but then the secondary point is really that defense and the front specifically. Like obviously today brought out the most of it, but how much pressure they generate with that front. And I mean, they've been a front that likes to just send 4 and see what they can get out of that. But this is also an aging front. So to see them do it with a Brandon Graham and a Fletcher Cox still just...
They look like young versions of themselves.
Exactly. Probably because they draft a guy like Jordan Davis and Milton Williams last year, and they allow themselves to kind of buy some rest on the bench and freshen up those legs because there's some more rotation going on. And those guys don't have to churn out 70 to 80% snap share every game. They can kind of rest up and stay the, as we talk about in Buffalo, best versions of themselves. So I think that's a big part of it. But then obviously they got a lot better at the second level of their defense this year. Adding Kazir White and Nakobe Dean, I think, went a long way for them. I don't know how much Nakobe Dean's actually playing for them, but I really like Kazir.
He's coming in on like sub packages, and I wonder still if it's, TJ Edwards and Kazir White have seen more snaps there. I think that shoulder's going to be playing a role for him. Again, he dropped because of that injury on draft night that everybody was talking about, and he didn't have it. He didn't have the surgery. He didn't have it addressed. So I feel like
during the preseason, did he not?
He what?
Didn't he play a ton during the preseason?
Dean? He played enough. I don't know.
Okay, I thought he played a lot. I could be making that up.
He played a decent amount. He's not even – I want to see what the snap counts were from today, but he didn't register anything on the box score as far as like a tackle or an assist or anything like that. I didn't see him a lot on the field today. But I mean, yeah, if he's a nice future piece. If he's healthy moving forward, I think he's a really fantastic option for them. They're just so nasty. Like again, to drill some of those numbers. So Brandon Graham had 2.5 sacks today, 2 tackles for loss, and he had 5 QB hits. Hassan Reddick, fantastic signing for them. I wondered how he was going to fit. He had 1.5 sacks today, 2 QB hits. Fletcher Cox, 1.5 sacks, 2 QB hits. Josh Sweat, 1.5 sacks, 3 QB hits. Javon Hargrave, who was an absolute monster on the interior, he had a sack today. If you can rush 4 and get pressure with 4 and drop 7 into coverage, it's an advantage for anyone, let alone if you've got some studs on the back end like Philly does. And then the studs that they have up front. And then also what's key is they're able to fit the run with their 4 up front. They had issues in week 1 against the Lions. There was a large discrepancy versus how they fit the run with Jordan Davis versus how they fit the run without Jordan Davis. They cleaned that up a little bit. But having that piece with Davis and having that ability to collapse the pocket on the interior and affect the depth of the pocket or just play and run support, again, that defense is just, it's looking very formidable in a variety of ways. And they're a team that's going to play those 2 high looks. They could play man. They could play zone. You got Darius Slade. You got James Bradbury. You want a pattern match? Cool. Maybe you want to play man? Cool. If you're playing bigger bodied receivers that are physical, you can play 2-man on them all day and do whatever you want. There's a lot of variety you can get with this Eagles defense. And then offensively, this offense is just so explosive. In the run game, we already talked about the running backs. Sanders, Scott, and Gainwell could all be out the front door or the back door or run through the middle at any point with the speed that they have. And then you look at the passing game, so much of today's NFL, again, the whole reason you see 2 high shells and 2 high coverages, it's all to limit explosives, right? The Eagles create explosives downfield and they create explosives underneath, whether it's on the short or the intermediate or in the screen game. Having A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, it works so well with Jalen Hurts because the one thing Jalen Hurts could do, even when his mechanics work great, he's a very good deep ball thrower, especially a good deep ball thrower outside the numbers. So if he gets a one-on-one opportunity like we saw multiple times today with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, he throws a real pretty vertical ball outside the numbers, and they ate off of that today. So you've got someone who was already good at creating explosives outside the numbers. Then you take his legs, and he can create explosives with his legs at any point. We saw that in week 1 against Detroit. Detroit was playing a bunch of man coverage. What happens when you play man coverage? You turn to watch your receiver and you take your eyes off the quarterback. If he breaks contain, he's going to take off. That's all Hurts did in week 1. He's a constant threat on the ground from a scrambling standpoint or in a designed run standpoint. He's probably the ideal quarterback to run read option because he's got speed, he's thick, he's got power, he's got moves, he can throw that dead leg a la Raheem Blackshear. He can do a lot, not to mention he can throw it. And now you're also seeing him start to be able to throw over the middle. He's hitting those in-breakers. He's hitting slants. He's hitting digs. Whether it's his own individual progression or the addition of A.J. Brown, the field has opened up to him more. He still has some work to do with his efficiency overall and his accuracy and placement as a thrower. I still don't think he's a complete product there. But you have an offense that it can just create explosives at any point. And I mean, I get efficiency. Like, it's awesome to be like 8 out of 10. But if you're 5 out of 10, but all 5 of those completions were for like 17 yards plus,
right?
Like, all of a sudden you're getting yardage in big chunks and big gains. And that's also on top of having arguably the best offensive line in football.
I was going to say, we haven't talked about, that's like the one thing we talked about this whole thing with the Eagles. We haven't talked about their offensive line. And not only is it really good at the top end, they already found their Kelsey replacement in Cam Jurgens. Like, they're already thinking towards the future and this idea of, we want to maintain this idea that we are going to win in the trenches, and they do it on defense. They want to do it on offense as well, because we talked about it last week with, I'm already forgetting the quarterback we talked about it with, but it just isolates variables, making that offensive line good or sufficient, or at the very least dependable.
We talked about
raise the floor.
We talked about it with the Lions. So when they bring in the franchise quarterback, if it's a young guy, you know what you're getting because you've eliminated variables or reduced them.
And that's the idea here with Jalen Hurts. Like, who knows what Jalen Hurts would be today if he went to a team like the Bears, who can't protect their quarterback. Like, that's why this whole arc with Justin Fields is going to be really difficult to evaluate, because it's tough for him to stay clean in the pocket.
And Man, I feel bad for Fields. I don't even want to get into that Bears mess. I forgot one point it was like I looked and saw the stat line. He was like 7 of 18 for 93 yards, and I was like, gross.
It's just tough to get things going.
It is.
You need
It's
an
really
offensive
tough.
line.
And I also think some of it's on him with his pocket presence and where he doesn't step up. He tries to escape. It's a mess over there in Chicago right now. I wonder what he's going to be for the future.
But it's a symbiotic relationship, you know,
Very
your
so.
pocket mobility and how you maneuver in the pocket is also a function of what your pocket looks like on a regular basis. So
Yes,
it's just the pot calling the kettle black. It's the chicken
tough.
or the egg.
And
It's all of that.
that's where the Eagles have, again, you're trying to remove variables, right? Let's talk about that with Jalen Hurts. Like, you want to find out if Jalen Hurts is the guy. Cool. Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, you trade for A.J. Brown. You have one of the best, if not the best offense. They're an easy top 5, when healthy, top 5 offensive line in football. For me, I think they're the best. Lane Johnson, Mailata, Kelsey, like, what's his face? Brooks, like,
Dickerson too.
Oh, I love Landon Dickerson. I wanted the Bills to take Landon Dickerson. There's so much to like about this team. And again, this is why I think they have that complete factor. They can hit you with explosives in the passing game downfield. They can hit you with explosives underneath in the screen game. They can hit you with explosives in the run game with their running backs or with their quarterback with design runs or via scrambles with their quarterback. And you try to eliminate all of these variables for Jalen Hurts, which I think they have to a degree, and then you sit him behind this really good offensive line, and it allows him to develop as a quarterback and as a pocket passer and in getting into that progression reading style of QB, which he wasn't at Bama and he wasn't at Oklahoma when he was putting up like 75 touchdowns a year. And he's progressed. This was a team that I thought if Jalen Hurts could just take, he doesn't have to take the next step, but if he took a marginal step upwards, I thought this was a Super Bowl favorite in the NFC because of how complete of a team they are on paper from a roster standpoint. And, I think the only knock against them right now is they don't have a signature win. I don't think you're looking at any game being like, oh, they beat this team. That's a really good win. And we're going to see the potential for that as we move forward. But the Eagles look like a really, really complete football team and somebody that's going to, have to be reckoned with. And in an NFC where is Green Bay the best team? Yeah, exactly. Like when Tampa's healthy, is it Tampa? Is it the Rams?
That goes to your point too about having a signature win. It's harder to have a signature win when you're playing in a weaker conference because you're less likely to play a strong team.
You don't know who's good. Nobody knows who's good. Nobody knows who's the best. And yeah, the NFC, I love how you said that. Like the NFC is up for grabs for everyone. Why not the Eagles, who are 3-0 right now and a very complete football team and a dangerous team offensively, defensively. They also create explosive plays defensively, whether it's sacks or turnovers. They're aggressive, just a really fun team to watch.
Agreed.
Very dangerous. Someone else who's been fun to watch, this Jacksonville Jaguars team, man, I was looking at the tape last week because I mainly wanted to see where the Colts were struggling. And I started watching for the Colts struggles. And after like 2 minutes, I was like, forget that plan. I just want to watch the Jags front. That's all I'm doing. I was watching their front four and some Devin Lloyd in coverage. We talked about Devin Lloyd being the best pattern matching linebacker in this class, also a good coverage linebacker. This front is violent. They're nasty. They convert speed to power with regularity. They are a problem. They go into, granted, the Chargers, again, still are without Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert's banged up, although he uncorked like a 55-yard throw on the run with broken ribs today.
Wild.
Unbelievable. But they go into the Chargers' house and stomp the Chargers. This defense seems real. The offense has some things clicking. They're a couple crazy Jahan Dotson plays in week 1 away from being 3-0 right now and easily atop this AFC South. How are you feeling about this Jags? Do you think this team offensively, defensively, do you think they're for real? And what are you taking away from today's game?
I do think they're for real. And I think a lot of it stems from the steps that Lawrence has taken on top of everything about the defense. Like, I don't want to get away from the defense because I think the defense has been really great this season. Like you said, against the Commanders, it really was Jahan Dotson that stole the show from them. Like, they played a solid game. There were just a couple of plays that got away from them, but yeah, that front and really the defense as a whole, they've just been stockpiling talent for years, but it's been wasted because there's like what is the leadership in Jacksonville? And I think they're finally getting that right with Doug Peterson, whether he's the long-term answer or not. Like, he is kind of creating an even keel, just like something more reliable and something you can depend on that's not going to like ebb and flow so
much more
dramatically.
competent than Urban Meyer.
Exactly. But even before Urban Meyer, it's just like,
good point.
It's all over the place with Jacksonville. And like a lot of these, like Josh Allen, the pass rusher, I feel like you have to do that.
I know.
He was there before Urban Meyer, but like he's really starting to play really good football right now.
Unreal.
Exactly. And I think a lot of that just stems from leadership, just like what's going on with who's steering the ship. And I think it stems a lot from Peterson, just having some dependability, someone who's going to keep that ship afloat, even keel, something that you can depend on. But I really want to get back to the point of like the stockpile of talent that they have. They have brought in so much talent, specifically at edge rusher and just defensive line in general. You think about Josh Allen, Kayvon Chason, Trayvon Walker this past year. Then they just signed guys like Arden Key, Foley Fatukasi, Roy Robertson Harris. All of these guys are recent acquisitions to some extent. Obviously, Chason and Allen, are more distant past.
But they're part of that like new breed and the move forward for where this franchise is going.
Exactly. And now they're starting to find some continuity with the leadership team. And I think that front, and I think this is what they're trying to build, is that identity of we want to win up front to make things easier on the back end for our young guys. Because you think about guys like Tyson Campbell, Andre Sisco, they got some young guys in the secondary, and you want to make life easier for them by generating some pressure up front and forcing those quarterbacks into some more likelihood of turnover worthy plays. So I think they've done a really good job of that, but also like the multiplicity in their fronts and how they're using these guys with stunts in games. And like you saw Trayvon Walker get a pass breakup today, like dropping into coverage. Like
when he drops, he passes off the slot receiver and then drops down and picks up the fullback or tight end who hitched up and knocks. That got me out of my seat.
And I get where everyone came from draft day. Like, oh, you overdrafted this guy at first overall, but like
traits over production.
This is why people pick traits, because there are just certain things where it's like, yeah, maybe what you've seen so far is only scratching the surface of what we're going to ask him to do and what he could be in 10 years. So that's why they took the home run swing at him. And obviously it's way too early to tell if he is going to be that home run grand slam type player, but he's playing very, very well. And I think this entire team is playing super well. Going back to offense and Doug Peterson, I really do think a lot can stem from that. The added weaponry and then the offensive creativity that Peterson brings, especially in the red zone. What they're doing in the red zone, they are so efficient right now, like just doing all sorts of stuff in terms of personnel usage, in terms of just what concepts they're running in the pass game or the run game. I just love what they're doing as a team. They have so much talent. Their team reminds me of like the NBA G League, where they just have a ton of talent, but they don't know how to use it yet. They just have to organize it. And they're finally starting to find some identity and organization to all of that talent. And it looks like they're starting to hit that point where they're finding their identity. I believe this is how I, as a Bills fan, I would attribute this season for them as their 2020 season, where they're finding that identity as a team, where all of these parts of the team are coming together and working as one. And you can kind of see it working more cohesively than it ever has. Because the Bills have had talent for years, but it all came together in 2020. And for the Jags this year, I think they've had talent, never as much talent as they've had this year, but it's really coming together even in this first year of having that talent.
You need that leadership. When we're thinking about the Jags and talent, I think back to the team that went to the AFC Championship, and you're sitting there on defense. And honestly, they were one Danny Amendola, third and like 15 completion away from going to the Super Bowl and beating the Patriots in New England. Yeah. That defense that had Calais Campbell and Ngakoue and Miles Jack and Ramsey and AJ Boye and just a whole bunch of pieces, but they didn't have the proper leadership. They also didn't have a quarterback. Blake Bortles was not that guy, but they had Leonard Fournette on offense. They had a good offensive line with all these weird pieces. And now, you see what they're doing. We'll start with offense. I'll pick up on your Doug Peterson point. And I say we, I mean like football people, I guess, and I know I did it as well, balked at the money that the Jags gave Christian Kirk and Zay Jones. And I like Christian Kirk. I liked him at A&M. I liked him with the Cardinals. I've watched a lot of Christian Kirk games because I've had him for fantasy, and I've had a lot of Kyler Murray the last couple of years. So I've seen a bunch of Kirk, but the money was outrageous. Yeah. But if you're going to scheme things up for these guys, then okay. They are scheming things up for Christian Kirk. They're using him in stacked formations and stacked looks and bunches and allowing him to get the clean release and get across the field. They're lining him up in the backfield and running him off of angle routes and Texas routes for touchdowns. They're getting him clean releases and taking advantage of the speed. And then they're coupling that with how they're using Trevor Lawrence and taking advantage of his athleticism. They're getting him on the move. They're using bootlegs. They're getting a lot of movement with him. They're
almost getting back to his Clemson offense.
Very much so. And taking advantage of his mobility, his athleticism, his ability to throw on the run, pinpoint the football. Yes, take advantage of it. And then that's also tying into what they're doing on the ground with James Robinson and Travis Etienne. Robinson is super underrated to the point that I didn't even think they needed to take ETN in the first round, but you've got this cool.
I think that was a Lawrence play, by the way.
I could see that. This guy was awesome for me. I really like him. I want him. Silas coming through. Silas coming through with a Bills comment. One, thank you very much, Silas, for being here, and thank you for your super chat and the donation. Silas says we got to find out who cursed us, meaning the Bills, and fix this. We're still the best team when healthy. We got to get relatively healthy. That he was a killer today. Yeah, Silas, Kendall, and I. Going through just the NFL league wide today, we led with Bills Dolphins because of the magnitude of that game. And a lot of the things we pulled were variable related, whether it was injuries, pregame, injuries that happened in game, the heat, the cramping. On paper, I think, the Buffalo Bills are still the best and most complete football team in the NFL. But anybody can be beaten on any given day. The Dolphins got one today. The tweet I think I used earlier was this was a grain of sand, not the grain of sand. It sucks. It's annoying, but move forward. Again, especially in a game that's filled with so many variables, it's hard to really take anything from it. Although Kendall and I did pinpoint the Bills' offensive line struggles in the run game as being a problem for the second week in a row.
What I will add is the Bills have been relatively healthy for the past 3-4 years. They've been pretty lucky in that regard. So, I mean, it was bound to come around at some point.
They were lucky, but they were lucky to a point that I thought it was because of something they were doing that they were staying healthy.
In-house, sports science, nutrition, all that kind of stuff.
I'm not going to lie. Part of me is also looking at myself. I usually don't tweet during games because of superstition, and I started tweeting during games this year, and look what's happened. I just want to put it out there. I'm legitimately looking
at the injury elf.
I might stop. We'll see what happens, but I appreciate your comment there, Silas.
Yeah, thank you, Silas.
Yeah, the Jags are just doing a lot of things you like. Taking advantage of, you got this mobile quarterback who has all the tools physically, who's also got the tools mentally. He can go through his progression reads. He can throw with anticipation. He knows how to read defenses.
His decision-making is much better this year.
Yes. You can tell that he started to take a jump in his game, whether it's just a natural year 2 jump or it's because of him working with Doug Peterson, who got a ton out of Carson Wentz and put him in an MVP season. And then you've got, these fun pieces with the running backs, with this thunder and lightning combo. And I don't want to use that because Robinson, I think, has more speed that he's given credit for, but everybody's going to be thunder compared to ETN because how fast he is, how much burst he has.
Relatively speaking.
He can run routes. He's a factor out of the backfield in terms of short yard burst.
He's their wildcat running back now, apparently.
You've just got all this variability in the backfield, and you can use either ETN or Robinson as a runner or as a receiver, and they both can function enough in pass protection. Then you've got Kirk and Zay Jones and Marvin Jones and Evan Ingram, who they're just like, hey, you're not a tight end. You're a tight end, but you're not a tight end. We're just going to line you up out wide and use you on one-on-one scenarios or have you stretch the defense horizontally.
Which works, though, because defenses have to match that personnel because defenses are still treating him like a tight end, at least for now. Hopefully they learn, but for now.
Take advantage of what you've got and use what I like that Jacksonville's doing on offense. They're playing to the strengths of their players.
Yep.
Some have more than others.
Maximizing their personal.
Yes. Which sounds so simple. It's like, well, shouldn't every team do that? In theory, yes. Some teams
coaches
don't
are
do it.
hard-headed.
Some coaches don't maximize strengths, or some don't know how to. And again, it's all a variety up, like a variety of it. Trevor Lawrence has a bunch of strengths, so you can play to a variety of them. Some have a narrower window. And however you slice it, Jacksonville's offense is playing to the strengths of their entire receiving core, running back group, quarterback. They're scheming things up. They're putting players in a position to succeed given their skill sets and their traits. It's really fun to see offensively. Yeah. And again, I think maybe people overlook, even still now, Jacksonville because of how bad they were last year. But you got to think like Trevor Lawrence is that quarterback that was like, I use this phrase all the time, but he was like literally like the prince that was promised. Like this amazing high school prospect goes to a national powerhouse, multiple national championship appearances, #1 pick. Like this dude was like the prospect. Like it's hard to compare anybody to like LeBron James, but like for someone to maintain that trajectory and hype from high school all the way to being the #1 pick, like maybe Clowney, but Clowney fizzled out.
In the NFL, exactly. And
like it's hard to do that.
You can still see Lawrence ascending. You still see that.
And you got a year 2 Trevor Lawrence coming through. It's just, man, it's fun to see how they're trying to eliminate variables with what they've added. And yeah, maybe they overspent on Zay and Christian Kirk, but it's working out. Christian Kirk got another touchdown again today. They just keep putting him in ways to succeed. So I like what they're doing offensively. Kudos to Peterson and the execution for the roster as a whole. I always just want to bring it back to this defense, this front. And, you know, everybody you mentioned earlier, plus Smoot, who Bills fans should know for wrecking some things last year in Jacksonville against the Bills. Their front is violent, and they just convert speed to power with regularity. Trayvon Walker is so fun to watch because everything he does is just physical. He plays the run physical. It doesn't matter if you're a tackle, a guard, or a tight end, or if he's dropping into coverage like he did today, or he's the spiker, or he's the looper on a 2-man game, or it's just straight one-on-one. Hutchinson has looked good for Detroit. I think there's a lot of people who were kind of like trying to knock the Trayvon Walker pick a lot. I mean, you made the joke earlier, and, you know, people got on them for that. He looks fantastic so far. Again, I don't think we're sitting here being like, this is going to be a 15-sack guy. Oh my God. But when you pair someone with that athleticism and that physicality with Josh Allen, Josh Allen looks like he can do anything on the edge. He can play the run. He can beat you around the edge on the arc. He's got moves. He's got plan. He's got technicality. He looks like he's rounding into a premier pass rusher.
Yeah.
So you've got the premier pass rusher. Trayvon Walker can literally, like, you don't need him to be the premier pass rusher. Just go be physical and fast. That's it. Just go do that, let alone with all the other pieces. And again, Devin Lloyd continues to shine in coverage, whether it's open field tackles, passing players off, matching, making plays on the ball. He had an interception today. He gets pass breakups. They got a fun front. I like what they're doing. Campbell's look good, although he got beat on a touchdown today against Mike Williams. I think this Jags team, all jokes aside, is for real. And especially in an AFC South where the Colts looked like the proverbial favorite. Well, not proverbial favorite, the incumbent and favorite coming into this year. We talked about them earlier. It's going to be tough for them given what they got. When they get healthier, we'll see what they can turn into. Tennessee looks like they don't have it. The Texans, I don't think they need to be a discussion for winning the AFC South at this point. I think the AFC South is relatively wide open, and the Jags are already sitting there with a win against the Colts. They're sitting there at 2-1, building some confidence. They're young, they're fast, they're physical. I think they have as good a shot as anybody to win the AFC South at this point. We'll see what happens as the year progresses, but I think they're for real.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree.
Very exciting for them. Kendall, this was fantastic. And now we got to round up things and wrap things up with our last segment for this show. Player of the day, rookie of the day, and drive of the day. We'll start with player of the day. Kendall, what do you got for your player of the day?
I'm going second straight week with Lamar Jackson.
Okay.
I mean, the dude has been so efficient on a low number of opportunities. Like, relative to his peers, think about it this way. Josh Allen had 400 yards on 63 pass attempts. Lamar Jackson had 218 on 29 pass attempts. Like, he's just been so efficient with his opportunities. 18 for 29, 218 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did have another interception this week, but he added 11 rushes for 107 yards and a touchdown. He was the Ravens' leading passer and rusher today. He's generating explosive plays regularly with both his arm and legs. And he left one on the table to Bateman early in the game, I believe. There was a fade ball that was just outstretched for Bateman. Pretty good one-on-one decision to go to Bateman on that one. Just missed him. But then also, like, that connection he has with Mark Andrews, so legit. It is.
Real.
It's like it's past the
so
point.
Much.
Yeah, it's past the point of budding. Like, it is a legit connection in this league. Like, it's beginning to rival the Kelsey Mahomes connection. I don't think anything will ever surpass that. But, like, in terms of quarterback tight end connections, those got to be the top two. They just have to be. Mark Andrews is on a tear, and a lot of it is because of the chemistry that he has with Lamar Jackson and, of course, the scheme that they're running in Baltimore.
They do a really good job scheming him open. And that was one of the things in talking about the Ravens this year for me. Like, a lot of people were like, well, look at their receivers, laugh out loud. And I was like, well, one, Bateman is sweet, but also Bateman's the 2 because Andrews is the 1. Like, Andrews is their number 1 receiving option, and he's a constant mismatch in a run-first offense, which is also really fun. I had a feeling you were going to pick Lamar. He was up there for me. I didn't pick him because I thought you would, and I wanted to talk about something else.
I appreciate the diversity.
You're welcome. I'm torn. Part of me wanted to go with Trevor Lawrence. 28 to 39, 262 yards, 3 touchdowns. I want to make sure I was correct here. 8 different receivers on the day, 11 targets to Zay Jones, 9 to Kirk, 7 to Marvin Jones, 3 to ETN, James Robinson, and Evan Ingram. He got so many people involved. But I'm going to go with Devonta Smith for the Philadelphia Eagles. 12 targets, 8 catches, 169 yards, an average of 21.1 yards per catch, 1 touchdown, a long of 45. You saw him working in a variety of ways. He could catch a drag and take it for 15 yards. Wide receiver screen, 12 yards and a first down. A vertical up the sideline to make a jumping catch, cool. A post towards the end of the first half to make a leaping catch over a safety where he mossed him and get tackled at the 1, cool. A jump ball scenario on a corner route in the end zone for a touchdown, cool. A complete wide receiver performance from Devonta Smith today, who I think he gets knocked a bit because of his frame, and he's not the biggest. I was going to say, thickest guy.
Really, really nice seeing him continuously shut down that narrative and playing bigger than his frame.
Yes, that's exactly what he did today. Like, there was, I mean, you see him running, you're like, man, that dude's skinny, but
looks like a
he
deer.
is so yes, he really is. He's so technically sound in what he does. His release package off the line as a rookie last year was already one of the best in the NFL. It's grown even more. He's a tremendous route runner. He understands coverage. He understands leverage. He's a burner. He's got speed. He's got great hands. But we saw, plays at the catch point today in a variety of ways, whether it was, he wasn't just running by guys and Hurts was laying it in there. Hurts threw a good ball, but he gave him a chance to get it. Devonta Smith went up and got it multiple times in a variety of scenarios. And I think obviously he opens things up for this offense along with A.J. Brown. So it was tough. There were several really good players from today. I'm going with Devonta Smith. I feel very confident that big time game today and very encouraging if you are an Eagles fan. Rookie of the day. What do you got?
I'm hoping that you go with the obvious one because I didn't. Okay. I went with Dameon Pierce. I think Dameon Pierce. Did you pick Dameon Pierce? No.
I have him in fantasy, and so he was balling out, and I've been watching him, and I was like, yes, he pulled off that big run, and then he got the touchy. Yeah. I was just like,
I think he deserves. I think he finally really deserves some praise. The main reason I picked him and not the obvious choice of Chris Olave was because I've just been hammering home rookie wide receivers for the first 2 weeks of this Rookie of the Week segment. I wanted to mix it up a little bit, and I think Chris Olave is the obvious choice. I believe he had like 142 yards on like double-digit targets or something like that. So he had a great week, back-to-back great weeks. But Dameon Pierce deserves his flowers here. I mean, he's been gaining respect from the coaching staff in Houston like week over week since the beginning of training camp. And we really saw it all come full circle this week. 20 rushes for 80 yards, obviously 4 yards per clip, and a touchdown, and then added 2 catches for 21 yards, which is specifically the area everyone was questioning from him in the rookie or the scouting department until essentially the Senior Bowl happened, and everyone was like, "Oh, he can catch a football." But
he was so frustrating to watch film for it at Florida because like he would get like 7 carries a game, and I was just like, "What is going on? Like, I want to see this guy."
One of the hardest evals, but when you see it, like he is every bit of run style that Javonte Williams is.
Oh, good call, good comp.
He is so similar in that style. Why would you not bet on that to work in the NFL? I understand there were a lot of people that questioned his speed and his explosiveness, especially after the testing results, but just turn on the tape, man. Like this guy has real burst, real explosiveness when the pads come on. And yeah, exactly. Physicality, seeks out contact, but also has enough wiggle to avoid contact if he has to. He pulled out a nice spin move today. I mean, he is a really, really solid, well-rounded 3-down back. I do believe he's going to get the Lions' share of the load there in Houston as the season rolls on.
Very encouraging performance from him today in a game that ended, unfortunately, for the Houston Texans. Yeah, Olave's up there. 9 catches on 13 targets, 147 yards. Some of that was, I don't want to say garbagey, but the Saints were, I don't know what, I mean, Jameis Winston just is not looking good. I don't want to dive into it too much. I'm actually going to go flip side then for my rookie of the day. I'm going to go with Devin Lloyd for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
There you go.
7 tackles, which was second on the team, including 5 solo, an interception, and he led the defense today with 3 pass breakups. He continues to just be everywhere in the middle of the field. And in today's NFL, like linebacker is such a conflict of a position because you have to fit the run, but you also have to exist in the passing world, which is stressing you now more than ever, vertically, horizontally, in a variety of ways. He just continues to be so sound in his reads and in his processing. Every time he drops, like okay, cool, I'm picking up this guy. Okay, nope, this guy's coming. Okay, bye-bye to you. Okay, let me pick up you.
He's just so good at relating to patterns and passing off and everything you have to do in zone.
He knows how to read the route distribution. He's got the ability to stay in phase. He can click and close. He can detonate and make tackles on impact. He's got ball skills.
Do you know, have they been using him as a blitzer or as a rusher at all? I haven't noticed it.
Not like what you're thinking of
Utah
from Utah,
was, right,
but to a degree. He will blitz. He had a sack week 1. Maybe it was last week against the Colts. Either way, he was the 5th blitzer on a 5-man rush. It might have been against the Colts because they use several 5-man pressures. Mainly coming in, he'll be like lined up over the center, and then he'll either come that way or what they're doing, they'll use him as a long looper, and he'll come from the center and go around the tackle. They're using him more coverage based. Again, it's only 3 weeks in.
Right.
But they're not blitzing him as much as they did in Utah, but you're seeing that versatility in that aspect as well. And that's something that I don't think they don't even have to tap into that skill set completely because they're like, well, our front 4 is crushing it. So you just play coverage. And he's really excelling in that role. I think it's tough to see rookie linebackers. You'll see splash plays from time to time, but it's hard to see them consistently process and excel at the mental side of the game. And I don't know if it's because the front is absolutely crushing it. And they're also playing some good man coverage on the back end, especially on 3rd downs. But Devin Lloyd is just playing good week after week. And as that linchpin of the front to the back end, they're 2-1. I think he's right up there with, if you're talking about that defense, I think it's Allen. I think it's Trayvon Walker. I think Devin Lloyd is a close 3rd right there. And he had a really good game today in a game that he needed to because the Chargers are not going to push the ball downfield. They're broken. We're going to have to talk about them at some point. But the Chargers are not pushing the ball downfield. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to live in the short and intermediate. Who lives in the short and intermediate? Linebackers. Devin Lloyd was everywhere today. I thought he made some things difficult for Herbert. My rookie of the day in that regard. Drive of the day. I'm thinking we might have the same one, but maybe not. Drive of the day. What do you got?
I had to go with the Colts game drive.
Same. And I don't even want to do another one for Devil's Advocate because that drive was just absolutely
I think there is obviously the one caveat with the Chris Jones penalty that kind of bailed them out.
Yes.
Of course, but
still 16 plays, 76 yards, 8 minutes and
8
14
minutes,
seconds.
to leave 24 seconds on the clock. It was so perfectly executed in that regard, I guess hindsight wise.
Fair. Ryan hit a bunch of big time throws.
Huge. And I think getting that 4th and 1 conversion on the QB sneak, the drive after they fail on a 4th and 1, learn from the mistake.
Oh, with Taylor, the drive before. Yeah, he tries to go up over.
Sneak it. Don't get cute. Just sneak it. Just get the first down. And
like the Bills on 2nd and goal that they didn't do.
Exactly. So it's that kind of thing, learning from your mistake in that regard, but then also piecing it all together, consistently staying ahead of the chains for that drive for the most part, hitting your guys, Pittman and Pierce, especially on clutch, keeping the chains moving, first downs. There were a couple times where they literally, like you said earlier in our Colts Chiefs segment, where they stopped on the sticks and got the yardage that they needed and nothing more. They were very clutch in that regard. And then, of course, it all finishes off with the big red zone target, 6'8", all 6'8" of him, Jelani Woods, 12-foot or 12-yard touchdown. Yeah, it was great drive. Really great to see them get that out in a game that maybe was a must-win pretty early in the year against a team that is really tough to have a must-win type of game against. But yeah, it was getting kind of doom and gloom for the Colts. They kind of had to have it, and they had it. So really, hats off to them. Absolutely great drive. Yeah, 16 plays, 76 yards. Wild.
The one thing that also swayed me in favor of this one was, I know they get the unsportsmanlike conduct call on Chris Jones that keeps the drive alive. But then after the 2-minute warning, they've got 1st and 10 at the Chiefs 29. 1st and 10 after the 2-minute warning. And they get holding on the first play on Matt Pryor. So they have to come back for 1st and 20 at the Chiefs 39, knowing that they need the touchdown there. And they get Taylor, left tackle, for 13 yards. Matt Ryan goes to Alec Pierce to the Kansas City 12 for 14 yards, where Pierce finds space. Ryan layers it in there perfectly. Then you see an incompletion on the next play, and then boom, Ryan hits Jelani Woods. So I felt like they got the freebie, but they also earned it a little, coming back by being at 1st and 20. Either way, I just think it's
good way to put it.
I think that balances a bit, and then that's enough for me because, again,
anytime you're scoring on a 16-play drive,
16 plays, 76 yards, 8 minutes and 14 seconds. Because also, what do you not want to do? Take the lead and give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes
with too much time.
Definitely want to give less than 13 seconds. That's what you need, and it worked to perfection. Just Matt Ryan, the offensive line, the receivers finding space, creating separation, Taylor, everything being able to, work in conjunction. Yeah, I think that was an easy drive of the day. We've been lucky, I think, with drive of the days these first 3 weeks of the show.
Yeah, they've been pretty obvious.
There's been these big game-winning drives that it's easy just to be like, oh, yes, these. Also, our rookie of the week last week, Garrett Wilson, he got knocked today. I'm hoping, prayers up for him. He got knocked, so I hope he's okay. Kendall, any parting thoughts or words of wisdom as we start to wind down here on this episode of Cover One Football Weekly?
I wanted to say looking forward to next week's matchups, but I don't know the full slate yet. I still have to do my homework.
Bills Ravens is going to be sweet.
I know that much. Yeah, we'll probably, unless it's a dud, we'll probably be talking about the Bills again because the Ravens are cooking. That the Ravens should be undefeated in the same way the Bills should be undefeated.
And Miami, it's ironic that the Ravens and Bills should both be undefeated, and they both are not because of Miami. So I don't know who that says the most about. It's also a fun game that we're going to talk about. 2 teams that have become favorites here on the show. The Jags travel to Philly next week.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm upset
we're talking about
that's a 1:00 game. Because
it's at the same time as the Bills game.
Yeah, I want to watch that one.
We'll figure it out. We'll definitely, we're gonna have to keep tabs on that. It's easier to have overlap at the 1:00 games for us prep wise than it is 4:00.
That is true, but that's definitely going to be. I think it's funny that as we go forward, I know we're gonna have to. We're gonna have teams that we always want to talk about and become favorites of ours, and I think the Jags are up there already.
Dude, I was big on the Jags going into this year. I don't know what it is. When I see a stockpiling of youth talent, I believe, and then I usually get let down, but the Jags have not let me down. They're They're doing really good things there. Yeah, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on that matchup. So we got 2 locked up for what it seems. We got Bills Ravens to talk about next week and Eagles Jags. So yeah, we're going to have to keep our eyes on that slate and see.
Who would have thought that the Jags would be primetime viewing for us in week 4 of the NFL? But that's the way this. I love it too. It's been an odd start to the year. You're seeing teams underperform, teams overperform. We're seeing wild comebacks and drives to end games. A lot of variables for a lot of teams. But that's
fourth quarters have been nuts.
Fourth quarters have been nuts. The whole witching hour thing on Red Zone. Mm-hmm. Once it hits, like once the 1 o'clock games hit 3
once he says the words witching hour, like everything goes out the window. No one knows what football is anymore. It's just about that scoreboard flipping.
Everything that worked for teams in the first 2 hours stops. Everything that wasn't working now is. It literally is the witching hour. Like it's and I feel like he's like. I feel like it's the Buffalo Wild Wings commercial, and he's hooked into all the games, and he has like switches, so he's like pushing buttons and doing 100%. Things to make them entertaining. It's been a wild start to the NFL year, which again is exciting for any sports fan, but especially football fans. That's what the chess match and the unpredictability of football is. So very exciting to see that.
Thank you, Jason. That'll be another one that will.
Chiefs Bucks is next week.
He says so. I mean,
Jason is a liar. Oh, that's right. Sunday night, Chiefs Bucks.
So we'll have to try to get out of here quickly next week. Unless
we double up and go live after for a bonus episode if that game is sick.
I don't know when I'm working next Monday morning.
You're gonna be fried. Good call out, Jason. Well done. So good games on the week 4 slate. Week 4 slate, not the week floor. That's not a thing. This has been another episode of Cover One Football Weekly. That is definitely a thing. We want to thank everyone who rode with us live here on this episode of the show. Thank you to the multiple super chats that we got. We greatly appreciate that. Thank you to everyone who tuned in live. We appreciate all the live engagement, the back and forth, especially again as we start to get the show up off the ground and take this brand and Cover One to uncharted waters, to non-Bills potential waters. So we appreciate all the support from Bills fans or non-Bills fans who are tuning in to learn more about the entire NFL and the game that we think you love. So we really appreciate all the live people who tuned in. If you tuned in later, or if you are listening later on any one of the podcasting apps or platforms, thank you for your post live view, download, listen, whatever have you. We greatly appreciate it. If you're still here on YouTube live or you're watching later, please drop a like on this video. It goes a long way towards helping us to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. If you're on the podcasting apps or platforms, please rate and review. Please subscribe either way, podcasting platforms or on YouTube. Tell your family and friends and loved ones about the show. And if you think this show is terrible, tell your enemies and try and ruin their day with that. We greatly appreciate any and every ounce of support that comes through. Oh, this is awesome. RJ coming through and says, great job. Love this new show. RJ. And so we greatly appreciate that. And then Jason says, this show is a great, especially after a game like today. Nice to focus on the entire league instead of being too focused on one thing.
Yep.
We feel you on that, Jason. Thank you very much for the kind words from you folks. Yeah, a little bit. We greatly appreciate everybody who stopped in with us live and again joined us or post live, whatever have you or verbiage you want to use. For myself, Anthony Prohaska, for Kendall Mirsky, this has been another episode of Cover One Football Weekly. We'll be back next week live Sunday, 7:15 p.m. for a recap of week 4. Russell Brown should be joining us again. Yeah. He had another doubleheader day for his son's football team. They lost 32-31 in heartbreaking fashion with a fumble with like a minute left on the goal line. So real tough day for him. So he's out. He'll be back.
Yeah, we excused him.
Yeah, we excused him for his emotional torment. Plus the Lions lost today after being up.
Heartbreaking way, yeah.
Yeah, so rough day for him. So he tapped out. He'll be back next week. But again, for myself, Anthony Prohaska, for Mr. Kendall Mirsky, this has been Cover One Football Weekly. We will see you next week.